Welcome into the Listeners Podcast. I'm Zach Bennett alongside my sister Paige. Today we continue our divisional previews, starting with the AFC East, New England Patriots, New York Jets, Buffalo Bills, and the Miami Dolphins. We look forward to the team's strength, break down their weaknesses, and give our predictions for the ceiling and floor and who we think the division winner will be. That's all next here on the His and Hers Podcast. Okay, so the AFC East was forever owned by Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, winning it year after year for the past 15 to 20 years, with a couple of Miami Dolphins sneaking in and stealing a few division championships. But now the tables have turned, and the back-to-back champions, Buffalo Bills, seem on track to repeat their success from the previous two seasons and build upon the previous success, as they are heavy favorites to repeat in the division and the betting odds to win the Super Bowl altogether. They sit at minus 215 and 215 to 240, depending where you look. The next closest, 475 plus 475 for the Dolphins, or plus 500 for the Patriots. Kind of a wash between what the books are thinking those two teams will finish, either second or third. And then lastly, at plus 2,800, plus 2,000, depending where you look, the New York Jets. Both New York franchises kind of at a low point where they have been for the last 5 to 10 years. So, Paige, looking at the AFC East, we have a super powered Buffalo Bills team with Josh Allen at the helm. What do you make of the rest of the division and how they'll stack up for the rest of the kind of how they fall together 1 through 4?
Obviously I'm going to put the Jets at the bottom. I think they're going to come in last in this division, as they have the past couple of years. I just think that they're still in a rebuild phase, with Zach Wilson being questionable for the first little bit after his injury in the first preseason game. I just don't think that there's much to say about the New York Jets. And they also have some tough road games. Obviously, their week 1 is versus the Ravens on the, so I think that's just going to be a really rough game for them coming out. And then they are playing at the Packers and at the Broncos this season, which are just going to, I think, be some really tough games for them. I think, what do you think about Zach Wilson? Let's talk about him from a perspective of, do you think that he is going to be kind of turn it around this next season? I mean, most rookies don't have an insane year, their first year in the league. I think the second year is really where we can start to see kind of the break from those who are going to succeed in the NFL and those who are going to end up being backup quarterbacks for the rest of their career. So what's your take on Zach Wilson?
Yeah, I have a thought that goes along with anyone who becomes a franchise quarterback, that if you don't look like the guy at the end of year 2, you probably aren't the guy. If you can go down the list of franchise quarterbacks, by the end of year 2, doesn't mean that they're winning and making the playoffs, Justin Herbert being an example, but you can tell throughout the entirety of the year, in that year 2 phase, they're going to be pretty dang good. Even Josh Allen, who kind of had struggled early on, particularly in his first year, even first half of his second year, by the end of the second year, he's really turning it on. And that's why the Bills made the big trade to get Stephon Diggs to give him a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. So I think year 2 is really important for all the rookie quarterbacks from last year, but particularly for Zach Wilson, who in the first game suffered a meniscus tear, not a full tear, but a partial tear, had injury problems last year, was one of his biggest concerns coming into the NFL, is that slight build. So for him to stay healthy throughout the rest of the year and make plays and make progress is going to be really important for the Jets to look at him and say, this is the guy for the future.
Yeah, it's interesting too with, I think a lot of the times when there's a lot of off the field drama with people, that sometimes that carries over. So I think there's just been a lot of buzz about Zach Wilson the past few months, which is kind of fun to talk about the kid.
Zach Milfson, as they call him in the street.
Especially because we're coming up on a pretty QB rich draft in 2023. There's a lot of really promising quarterbacks in this class. And so I think this is kind of a make it or break it year for Zach Wilson. He's going to have to play some good football to ensure that the Jets don't look for another option this next season.
Yeah, and I fully agree with you. Obviously, for the Jets, I would imagine we both agree that they're going to be at the bottom of their division this year. I would be shocked if you thought otherwise. Are you on the same page?
Yep, they're at the bottom.
They had a really strong draft class. They brought in Sauce Gardner. They have Elijah Moore, Brees Hall being another great draft pick from this year. The only problem and concern comes along their offensive line. Again, going back to Zach Wilson having to have a good year. If he's not being protected, then the chances just continue to look bleak on that outlook, but they've given him some good support. I think the coaching and the GM roles that they have filled now with Saleh, and I'm spacing who the GM of the Jets is, but they've had a couple back-to-back good off seasons where they've built good talent and brought it in. So I don't think this year is going to be a banner year for anyone. If you're a Jets fan, if you win 6 games, but Zach Wilson looks the part, makes some big throws, has some big moments. And Sauce Gardner, is in contention for Rookie of the Year. Brees Hall makes some good plays. I think you can look at the end of the year and say, okay, that was our first building block going forward. And then you hope just another good off season will come to fruition. And then you take another step next year. So I think the step this year is mainly just Zach Wilson's progression, winning a few close games and playing hard and being competitive. Because if an NFL franchise is being led in the right direction, is it under the right stewardship, there shouldn't be any blowouts, because the talent gap truly isn't that large from the best team to the worst team. There is disparity, obviously, but if there's good coaching in place and guys like playing for their coach and play hard for their coach, the disparity of these games really aren't that far away. And so that's why I think that's all you can hope for as a Jets fan this year. Is you're not going to make a run of the playoffs, and again, we might look dumb because who thought the Bengals were going to do it? But that comes with if Zach Wilson's the guy, like we know Joe Burrow is the guy.
Yeah, I think, best case, I think if you're a Jets fan, you're just hoping for continuous improvement. I mean, they haven't had a winning season in like the past 6 years. And so they kind of are used to this. And so in this terms of they're doing a complete rebuild, and that's what they've kind of been banking on. So I think just some little improvements that giving them some hope will be considered a winning season for any Jets fans out there.
And the GM of the Jets is Joe Douglas, by the way. I apologize for all the Jets fans out there for not knowing that off the hand. So your ceiling, your floor for the Jets, I put mine at about, the floor is about 4-12, 4-13 is about the floor. I do think as we'll get to in just a moment, I think the Patriots are going to take a step back from what I've seen from their offseason this year. And overall, about four wins seems about the worst that this Jets team can do with the talent they have on offense and defense. And I'm going to put the ceiling at about 7-8 wins. If the Jets get 8 wins, go 8-9 this year, that fan base will be ecstatic. It means that Zach Wilson did take a few steps forward. Sauce Gardner and their recent draft picks played really well. So 8 wins seems really optimistic, and about 4 seems where you're just in the same spot that you were at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, my ceiling's at very close to yours. My ceiling's at 7 for them, and my floor's at 3. So just one number off from you on each side.
Yeah, and just at the bottom of the division, like usual.
Yeah.
I guess the next point of contention would be, I think we both in agreement, and we'll get to the Buffalo Bills being the number 1 team. But for you, where do you see the third place team falling? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the Patriots, and the Dolphins have been there the last few years. But where do you think this one's going to end up?
Yeah, I'm putting Patriots in third this year. Obviously, it's hard to assume that Bill Belichick will do anything except win. They were able to sneak into the playoffs last year, but I just don't think that Mac Jones I just don't think that, I don't know. I don't know if his level of QB play mixed with what he has is going to be what is going to make this franchise kind of stand out from anyone else. I think that the Dolphins and the Bills have a lot more weapons and a lot more promise from their roster that I could see them kind of propelling them ahead of the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots are going to have an awful season. I think they're still going to have a winning season, but I think they will come in third. Obviously, with the Patriots, we've got some key arrivals of Devontae Parker, Ty Montgomery, both at the wide receiver position, Malcolm Butler coming in at linebacker. But we've also got the key departures of J.C. Jackson at linebacker, Kyle Van Noy, and Ted Karras. And so I think with those losses, and then they have a tough schedule. They're playing the Ravens, they're at the Packers, and they're playing the Bengals. And interestingly enough, Tua is actually 3-0 against the Pats in his career. And so I think that is going to be, that's kind of where I'm pointing towards the Dolphins being a step above the Patriots, is because Tua seems to have good success against them. And I think that with the Dolphins roster, that they are going to beat the Patriots both times that they play against them. And that's going to set them over the top.
Yeah, and not that I ever think the first week of the season, really tells you the story of what's going to happen for the entirety. Just 2 years ago, the 1-15 Jaguars beat the 11-5 Colts week 1, and obviously their seasons went completely differently. But I think that first game, New England at Miami, I think will be a tale of two seasons. I have, obviously faith and courage in what Bill Belichick is doing, but it just seems really strange with the implementation of two, like, they're not naming an offensive coordinator. It's just brain trust between Belichick and Joe Judge, and space in the coach who was at the Lions with Matt Patricia. They're all three are going to handle and help Mac Jones, although none of them have done offensive play calling before. Matt Patricia, when he was with the Patriots before, was the defense coordinator. That's what he was known for going to the Lions. Joe Judge was a special teams guy when he was last with the Patriots. And obviously Bill Belichick is a famous, famed defensive mind. So it's just very strange that with the departure of I'm spacing everyone's name, Josh McDaniels, I apologize, to the Raiders, that they haven't looked to supplant him or replace him with anyone else, but instead using this groupthink project on a second-year quarterback who surely needs the coaching. As good as Mac Jones looked in different areas last year, there wasn't ever a time where we thought this guy can take over a game. This guy knows what he's doing. From beginning to end. You could tell there's a lot of Josh McDaniels hand holding to get him to be successful. So this idea of just letting him roll with a bunch of different opinions and game plans just doesn't seem like an optimal situation to me. As much as I trust Bill Belichick, seems like it's going to be a mistake personally. So I kind of agree with you. I do think that they're going to finish third, but I do think it's going to be pretty competitive with them and the Dolphins. I do only put the ceiling at about 10 wins for the Patriots.
I'm out with them too.
And then I put the floor right around 7, 6. It'd be weird to see a Patriots team with 6 wins, but
yeah. I've got their ceiling at 10-7. I've got their floor at 8-9. I just don't think with Belichick as your coach that you're going to have too horrible of a season. I don't think Mac Jones is a horrible quarterback. I think that he'll have some good wins. He'll have some good plays. And we saw that last year. Still proving that he is potentially the best quarterback of the 2021 draft at this point.
Yeah, I just look at the beginning of their schedule. And I know that you read it off, but I look at the first 4 games, and you could paint me a picture that I would believe you that they start 0-4. 3 of their first games are on the road, and the only home game is against Baltimore. So they're at Miami, at Pittsburgh, home against Baltimore, and then at Green Bay. If you start an NFL season 0-4, that's tough to climb out of in any – I don't care how talented you are. And you could tell me to start 0-4, and I wouldn't be surprised in any manner, because that's a very tough beginning of the season. Having 3 of your first 4 games on the road is just a difficult way to begin. So again, I do think they're going to finish in third. I don't think the schedule makers gave them any favors doing it that way. So I'm in agreement with you, which puts us at the Dolphins at the 2nd spot. What kind of gives you hope that the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa are going to make that next step and potentially compete for a playoff spot this year?
Yeah, this one, I think the best case scenario is that Tua is legitimate NFL starter and is able to, I think that having McDaniel come in, he's able to just really mold Tua into like the potential that Tua has and really put it into use in a way that will work on that offense, which I don't think Brian Flores was able to do. then it's going to be an awesome offensive run for the Dolphins. I think having Hill, obviously, there adds a lot of excitement for Tua to be able to target. I think worst case scenario is Tua struggles. But I do think that they have enough talent on their team that even if Tua does struggle, this isn't going to be like a crash and burn season. I think that the Dolphins are going to kind of be one of those teams where their ceiling and floor are pretty close to each other, just because I think that they have so much talent. I mean, let's see, they've got the arrivals of Hill, Bridgewater, as a backup QB, Armstead and Williams at the offensive line. And I think that those types of protection for Tua, I still believe in Tua. I think that he hasn't had the best support around him and honestly the best coaching that he could have to make him successful. So I'm really excited to see what he's able to do these seasons with I love the move that the Dolphins made to bring a receiver in like Tyreek Hill, who can really give Tua not only like a target to throw to and an awesome one at that, but I also think that Tyreek's experience and his companionship with Patrick Mahomes the past few years, I think that's going to be a really good coaching experience for Tua as well. And he's going to learn a lot from Tyreek Hill if they're able to communicate effectively. And so I think that's really where I'm banking a lot of their success. They also are on the road at the Ravens, they're at the Chargers, and they also play the Packers this season. So I think that's going to be their toughest non-divisional games. But due to the fact that they're playing the Patriots and the Jets, I think that they're going to, in my opinion, easily slide into that second spot in their division, because I think that they're going to go 4-0 against those two.
Yeah, and this goes back to just like the Patriots, why I say that week one game between the two of them is going to be really important because as you just stated that, the Patriots game, then they're home against they're at Baltimore, home against the Buffalo Bills, and then at Cincinnati. I mean, both of them start with these pretty difficult schedules. And so whoever wins that week one game is going to have the kind of the lead. But my prediction, kind of a bold prediction, because of what's out there in the AFC West and how good of teams are in that division, I don't think either the Dolphins or the Patriots are going to make the Super Bowl. I just think I think that the Bills are too good. They're going to separate themselves in this division. We'll get to them, but with that start of a schedule, I think that they'll fight. They'll kind of fight and get back to a place of relevancy because they play the Jets. Divisional game, but then they're the Vikings, the Steelers, and then Lions, Bears, Browns before Deshaun Watson, Texans. So that middle stretch is going to catch them back up to be about 500. But then they go San Francisco, Chargers, Bills, Packers. So I think they're going to start in a hole, catch themselves back up because I do believe they're a talented team, but then they're going to be behind the 8 ball again. It's going to remind me, I think that the Dolphins are going to be very similar to what the Vikings were the last couple of years, a slow start, rush finish, and even what they were last year. I mean, I think they started 1-6, 1-7. I think they won 6 in a row to get back to 7-7 or somewhere in that range, 6-6 maybe, but it just wasn't enough. And so I think this is going to be very similar this year. And no fault of their own. It's just kind of a brutal schedule to start and finish the season. And so because of that and what is out there in the AFC and how stacked it is, I think that with the AFC North, AFC West, I think you're only going to have one team come out of the AFC East.
I don't think that's too far-fetched of a theory with what we're looking at. So I'd agree with you on almost every point.
Very stacked division. I would be 10-7 and about 5-12 was their floor. I got to see more out of Tua Tagovailoa, and who knows if Mike McDaniel is a very good coach. We'll find out this year, but he's never even been a coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator last year, but how much is Shanahan giving away? Kyle Shanahan giving away, the offensive guru that he is. So we're finishing up with the Buffalo Bills. Like I said, they're the betting odds to win the Super Bowl. They had the heartbreaking Kansas City, which then led to a rule change, played in one of the best playoff games that I have ever watched personally.
One of the funnest games ever.
13 seconds away from advancing to the AFC championship game, which would have been at home. But, last year they weren't a very dominant regular season team. I remember watching them play the Jaguars and they scored, I think, 10 points. and they lost to them, looked sluggish. They had some ins and outs, the Patriot game at home where the winds were going 30 miles an hour. So there were some low points of the year, but they really turned it on and should have, if they do things right, advance to the AFC Championship game. So where does this love for the Bills come from, do you think? And do you think they can live up to the hype?
I think so. I mean, personally, I think I also have some bias towards the Bills. I think they're the team I root for aside from the Vikings the most, just because I love Josh Allen. I love Stephon Diggs, and I love what they've been doing over there. And I just think Bills fans are fun. It's a fun fan base in the NFL.
They're really fun.
But I do think that this is a legitimate contender. I think that Josh Allen is proving to be one of the best quarterbacks that we've seen in a long time in the league. And I think that shootout between him and Mahomes was like the two best quarterbacks that we have in the NFL going at it. And like just so much excitement to see what those two are able to put up in the next. I think it's going to be a lot of fun football between those two. And so I just think that the Bills continue to build a really exciting team. Obviously, you mentioned earlier that they had that trust in Josh Allen. He got off to a bit of a slow start, but now he's got weapons on his team and they're able to kind of stack him so that there's so much potential for him to throw to and their running game and their defense. I think that this is kind of that time for the Bills that the Chiefs were at 3 years ago, where it's like they need to capitalize on this year because it might never be this perfect again. Obviously, they've got the addition of Von Miller, which I think is going to be huge. Obviously, he was just in Los Angeles. He got traded halfway through the season from the Broncos to go to Los Angeles, wins a Super Bowl. And now he's on the Bills. I just think Von Miller is an incredible player, an incredible teammate, and I think he's going to bring a lot of excitement to their O-line. And then we've got Daquan Jones being out on the defensive side, O.J. Howard at tight end, James Cook at running back. And so I think that the Bills are continuing to make strategic moves that are going to put them above not only their division, but also the competition in the rest of the AFC. And so I think that exactly as you said, they're really going to be honestly, I don't even think they need to worry about their division. Obviously, they need to. Divisional games are always hard, but it's like, I think the biggest thing for the Bills is being able to stand out and hold on in those really close games. So their toughest non-divisional games, they're playing the Rams week 1, Thursday Night Football. We'll all get to see them live on Thursday, which is going to be really exciting. Then I think the game everybody will look forward to is the rematch against the Chiefs in week 6, and that's at Kansas City. And then they're playing the Bengals week 17. And so it's kind of fun that they're playing they're playing the Super Bowl champions, the runners up, and the team that they lost to. And so I think it's going to be really fun, especially to see him and Mahomes. I think that's where we can expect to see a continuous competition between those two being in the same division. We're going to see them in the playoffs a lot together. And so I think that Josh Allen kind of getting that run last playoff season, I think it's just he's the type of player to me that is just he's been thinking about that playoff game every single day since the moment that it ended. And it's just adding fuel to his fire. And I think we're going to see it in even like Josh Allen 2.0 from the start of this season. Kind of the way he was playing in the playoffs. I'm hoping and thinking that we're going to see that throughout the rest of this entire season going into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mentioned a few times that they're the betting odds to win the Super Bowl, and I wanted to pull those out. So depending on where you look, plus 550 to 600 is where they're sitting. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are second, around 750, and then the Kansas City Chiefs and Rams are both about a plus 1,000. And then it goes Packers, Chargers, Niners, and the Broncos even jumped up there. So the fact that they missed the playoffs for 16 consecutive years, they make it under, I think it was the second year of Sean McDermott, and with Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback, losing to the Jaguars, and to know that they weren't ever going to be much better than that without making a move, and they were willing to take a step back. They traded away, cut some veterans, draft Josh Allen in that I believe it was a 2017 draft, and they were terrible that first year. It wasn't a very good season. Josh Allen, it was actually 4 years this year, because I remember that the first game Josh Allen won and the Bills won was against the Vikings. in the US Bank Stadium, blew them out. They were one of the largest favorites. The Vikings were. It was after their NFC Championship appearance. And the Bills, I think, were 28-point dogs because they just got blown out the week before. Came in, Josh Allen hurdled Anthony Barr, and the rest was history. And ever since then, there's been small incremental improvements. And now, 3 seasons past, they're the Super Bowl favorites. It's just amazing how much a franchise elite quarterback can change the entire outlook of your franchise. There were talks of them moving to a different location because they just weren't winning. And, maybe free agents don't want to go here. But now everyone wants to go there, and they got a guy for the next 15 years. They just signed on and, passed a new stadium build that's going to keep him there forever. So it's just kind of cool to see what he's done for that franchise. He is elite. He's unreal. He's a freak of nature. And so, as you mentioned at the beginning, I cheer for the Bills if I'm not cheering for the Vikings. I lived there for a couple of years, and there is no one that loves the Bills more. I mean, that a team more than I think Buffalo loves its Bills. Like I truly believe that they bleed it. That's all they talk about. It's all they care about. And you can see it in the post game and pre-game celebrations. That team means everything to them. And so if the Vikings don't do it, hopefully the Bills do, because I'm going to be cheering for them. So,
yeah, I think the one thing, everyone's got to find little things to pick at in each team. And I think the one thing that we've heard ramblings about is the fact that Brian DeBole, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bills the past few years, who's now the Giants coach, that how is that going to affect Josh Allen's play? Is it going to be different? But I think that the Bills kind of made the perfect move where Ken Dorsey, who's his replacement, has been working as the QB coach for the Bills for the past 3 seasons. And so I think I think we're going to see that offense just continue to hum and operate as it did when Brian DeBole was there. And so I don't think there's going to be a ton of room for hiccup. It's not like a brand new guy's being brought in has to get caught up to speed of how things go. There's like just continued consistency with them. And so I don't think it's as big of a deal as some people might make it out to be, but I know we have to point out things in each team to try to figure out where their weaknesses will be.
Exactly. No. And so I think we're in accordance. I think that the Bills can go, honestly can go 14-3. I think people don't, realize how 14 wins in an NFL season, crazy thing to do. So 14 wins seems pretty likely. There are some tough, as you read through their schedule, there are some tough games. They could be an 0-1 playing the Super Bowl champions when they're dropping the banner, a pretty emotional night, which we'll be watching for this Thursday. They play against Green Bay. They play on the road and, at Arrowhead. They play some tricky games, but as long as they maneuver them, they play in Cincinnati, as you mentioned as well. So I do think 3-4 losses seems likely, but that should be more than enough for the division and should be in contention for that number 1 seed. And if I'm Buffalo, getting that number 1 seed is important because I don't think there's anyone that could come into Buffalo in a playoff environment and beat them. Like I'd be blown away if that happened. Now, if you have to go to Arrowhead, whole different ball game. Not that it hasn't happened like we saw last year, but you'd much rather have the odds in your favor having them come to Upper East New York.
100%, especially to have the advantage of the Buffalo Bills fans in surrounding you.
That's right. They throw dildos on the field. That's how crazy they are. So, all right. Is there any other thoughts on the AFC East before we wrap this up?
I think this is division we're the most agreed upon. So
yeah,
pretty straightforward.
Kind of weird. Hopefully we're right, or else we both will look like it. All righty. Well, that'll wrap up this episode of the His and Hers podcast, the divisional preview AFC East. We'll continue the next 2 divisions. The last 2 we have remaining, the NFC and AFC South. We'll continue that here in the next episode of His and Hers.